Welcome to Cruise Through HTX. My name is Freddie Cruz. This is a podcast about the organizations, businesses, and individuals that make the greater Houston area great. One such individual is Sylvia Casares, a food scientist, restaurateur, and owner of Sylvia's Enchilada Kitchen. During this episode, we dive into all things enchiladas and how her time with Uncle Ben's Rice continues to impact her work. We dive into what it takes to run a successful restaurant, new products she's launching, and so much more. Learn more about Sylvia, including her legendary enchilada menu, her cookbook, and cooking classes at sylviasenchiladas.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, you can ensure we continue to get access to guests like Sylvia by sharing the episode with your family and friends and by subscribing to the show on your favorite podcast platform.
Hi, I'm Ed Sheeran.
This is Bruno Mars.
Hey, it's Katy Perry.
This is your man Flo Rida with Freddie Cruz.
This is AJ Mitchell with Freddie Cruz.
Freddie Cruz.
Freddie Cruz.
Tell you go pick Mr. 305 and you already know what it is.
My name is Freddie, and it's time to cruise through HTX. If you're going to talk with the enchilada queen of Houston, you've got to begin the conversation with the first enchilada she ever made.
The first enchilada I ever made was a enchilada with chili gravy and cheese, yellow cheese. So that is I call it an iconic sauce of Texas because it was created in the southern part of Texas, most likely San Antonio, and it's classic Tex-Mex because it's made with yellow cheese, and yellow cheese is American. It's not. You're never going to find a yellow cheese enchilada in Mexico.
What is your favorite kind of cheese to cook with outside of the yellow American cheese?
Well, we work with, Monterey Jack, Chihuahua, queso fresco, and panela. So those are all the white cheeses for the southern, south of the border enchiladas and other dishes that we have that are more, Mexican. I grew up on the Texas-Mexican border in Brownsville, so I'm able to, prepare the recipes pretty much like I remember them from Mexico. So I'm very bicultural like that, in having, grown up right on, a few blocks from the bridge to Matamoros. Very fluid community, people. Where are you from?
Mexican-American, born, raised in Houston, spent 3 years in Minneapolis, which is unlike anything I've ever experienced in my entire life.
Yeah, I would imagine that'd be quite the shock.
Believe it or not, they actually had a really good Mexican restaurant up there. I think it was called Pepe's. My wife and I were pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I would imagine. People that know how to cook, that actually know how to cook and put together recipes properly, do scattered to the four winds. You never know. Chances are probably not so good once you leave this part of the state, but
Before opening her iconic restaurant, Sylvia worked as a food scientist for Uncle Ben's Rice. It's a job that continues to have an impact on how she operates her kitchen.
When I started there, it was right out of college. It was my very first job. I was supposed to be a teacher. And then I got a call and got the job. It paid double. So needless to say, I came. And so the first thing I did was, there were two main things I did: recipe testing and development, assisting with that. And then there was another part, what we call sensory evaluation, which was, I call it the human analysis of food. So you try to, you prepare these samples and you code them, and then people evaluate them and for flavor and texture. And so you're, trying to be all analytical. It's all like in writing. And so those two things, were very helpful to me. Then after 3 years of that, I moved into new product development, which was developing new products, brand new products, that whatever ideas they came up with. The Uncle Ben's is owned by the M&M Mars candy family. So they would get these crazy ideas of things they wanted to do, and we'd work on them, and then it didn't work out or whatever. So 7 years of that. So I think all of that attention to detail, the cooking, recipe testing with a lab notebook, and keeping detail on every time I do a recipe, and then tasting it and deciding, if I've maxed out on flavor, and just being very meticulous and terca, kind of, as far as not being satisfied with like whatever. And I always tell my students in my cooking class that I want my recipes to explode with flavor. So, I don't like recipes or food that's got low on flavor. Like if it's chicken soup, I want it to taste like, like we boiled a chicken, and like we just did it from scratch. I don't want powders and things that are gonna kind of be phony or fakey. So yeah, so I think that was it. It was just the detail, the taking my time. There was a recipe that I worked on for about 2 years. Off and on, certainly not every day.
More of my conversation with restaurateur Sylvia Casares in less than 90 seconds. This episode of Cruise Through HTX is brought to you by my media company, Speak Podcasting, on the web at spekepodcasting.com in our first online course of 2024. I'm excited. It's called PodQuest, Cracking the Code to Creating a Binge-Worthy Show. This is for 2 types of people, all right? 1, aspiring podcasters who want to launch their show on the right foot. And 2, unfocused podcasters who know they're unfocused and they want to relaunch with a clearer and more concise vision for who their ideal listener is. It's futuristic, it's interactive, we got some really cool video content for you, and it's using storytelling techniques. As you know, I've written 3 novels over the past 5 years, and so this right here was super fun for the team and I to create, and we can't wait for you, the future podcaster or current unfocused podcaster, to enroll and take the course. Check it out at speakpodcasting.com/podquest. We continue the conversation with Sylvia Casares and something she calls average fajitas.
One day somebody said, you're, and it was a very good customer, and he said, and your enchiladas are here, your fajitas are here. And I knew it because I wasn't putting much effort into making them. I kind of made them like everybody else, which what most Mexican restaurants do is they buy a marinated fajita and, season it with something and cook it and send it out. And so I knew, and I was using inside instead of outside. I already knew that I need, but like I said, fajitas were like an afterthought for me. It was all about my enchiladas. So I thought, but people come and they're going to want they're going to try fajitas. They're going to evaluate me on fajitas. So I got to get better at it. So it took me about 2 years to figure out a marinade that would not take the flavor of the beef away. To me, it needed to taste like a great steak. Lots of beef, and so that was 2 years off and on, and I would make my tests, and I would get 2 or 3 or 4 employees, and I would do it like I did in the lab. You have to give me your answers in writing. Don't be talking and influencing one another. Tell me what your favorite is, because the power of suggestion. When somebody says, oh, this is like too whatever, and it does influence you, whether it's food or anything. The minute somebody makes a strong statement like that, it puts it in your head. So you're not allowed to share your opinions. So I would do that. I'd do my little, taste panels, if you will. So all of those things. And I think just, in combination with just who I am, my palate, having grown up in Texas, on the border, cooking from scratch, I know the difference. I can certainly tell the difference from using convenience products. One of my strong beliefs is that substituting for convenience or cost or nutrition will usually cause you a loss of flavor. It's going to cost you flavor. There's no such thing as saying, well, I'm just going to use this, powdered whatever instead of the actual original source, and it's going to come out identical. You're going to lose. And it's just like life, gain something, lose something, there's not always gain. Sometimes, it's okay, but those are things I learned in the lab. You take something out you're going to have to try to fill the gap with something else.
So when you have your palette of ingredients, are you removing one and adding another before you're altering the measurement? So let's say if you have your salt, pepper, garlic powder, and cumin, before you remove a single ingredient, are you adjusting the measurements, or is it vice versa?
Yes, I will. I'll adjust it. I'll do like, say, 3 versions of one. Let's say I decide that I need more garlic or more comino. So I'll do, say, 2 or 3, and I'll go, okay, well, I'm going to do this is going to have 1 gram. This is going to have 1.5 grams. This is going to have 2.5 or something. For me, the way I do it, I just keep notes. I have a notebook, and and if I put the thing down and come back 3 days later, so I call it the scientific method. And, I recently put my research and development hat on, and I wore it for about 1.5 years because I am in the process of bottling my salsa that comes to the table, the complimentary salsa, and my salsa verde, the one that goes on chicken enchiladas, and my chili gravy. And so, to go from a recipe in your kitchen into a manufacturing is totally different. So it took me back to my Uncle Ben's years, and my notebooks and my notes and my digital scale and, all of that. And I don't think I could have done it had I not worked in the food lab. And in fact, nobody is bottling or canning or anything a chili gravy. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. There's some canned products, but they're very, very, very marginal that are out there. But mine will be bottled.
How long did it take for you to get your salsa to the point where you're like, all right, this is about as perfect as it's going to get?
Probably about maybe 2 months, but that's something you make every day. You're making it throughout the day. It's a high volume recipe. So, yeah. And so, like, the thing with my tomatoes is that no matter what, we use fresh tomatoes. And, we don't use, like, there was a time a few years ago, probably about 15 years ago, when tomatoes quadrupled in price. And I would have my salesman offer to sell me canned tomatoes. And I said, no. People are going to know immediately. They're going to have a weird flavor, a metallic flavor from the can. We can't do that. So I just bit the bullet and quadrupled my price of tomatoes. And tomatoes is it's the produce item that we buy the highest quantity of. And next to that are avocados. So it was, but I know, the other thing I know about working in the food lab is that people memorize flavors. The human palate will memorize a flavor, and you're going to remember what something tasted like. And it's really weird, even if it's been 10 or 20 years since you've had it. When you put it in your mouth, it's going to take you back to wherever you got it, And so you don't forget the flavors of whatever recipe that was, seemingly it should be an important recipe, a memorable one, but you're not going to, people memorize flavors.
I've got to know, what's a dish that's taken off to great success that you weren't so sure about in the beginning?
I make this tortilla soup I have 2 kinds of tortilla soups. I have the traditional, like, consommé, like chicken broth, right? And then I have another one that is made with pure chiles, and and that's more of a recipe. That's more of a flavor you would find in Mexico. The one that we have been making since the beginning of time, since I started in the business, is the one with the regular chicken broth, consommé. But this one, it's another style, and it's made with chiles, and people it's amazing. And I want to say white people, but they love it. They love it. It's got amazing flavor. And so that really surprised me. That one did, of my recipes that, and I had to work with it a while to get it just right, but it was quite surprising. The other one that was a little bit of a shock is I was trying to have more vegetarian dishes. So one day I just got the idea that I would do a enchilada calabacita, and so, I remember I was at Fiesta and I was looking around in the produce department. I thought, what else can I do? What kind of vegetable enchilada can I do that would be great? that's a vegetarian, and because I already had spinach. We do spinach, and it's very popular. And all of a sudden, I looked over there, and I see the calabacitas, and I thought, calabacita con pollo, and then I developed a light cream sauce to go on it, not a real heavy. I would say it's something like a little bit like an Alfredo sauce, you know, but it's not real heavy like that. And so anyway, that's been a huge hit, more than I imagined. I mean, I was appealing to my vegetarians, but everybody loves it.
What kind of impact does national exposure from the likes of Food Network and USA Today have on a business like yours?
It's been building up. I think the national exposure helped me to get my cookbook published by a major publisher in New York, which is, thank you, which is part of Macmillan, St. John's Press. And I would never have been able to collaborate with a major publisher had I not had the national exposure, because unless you're like a Bobby Flay or something like that, publishers will not do a cookbook by a local or regional chef. So that helped me. Plus, it was, I guess, a category where there aren't that many cookbooks written, and the ones that are out there are iffy, So yeah, so that definitely was a big one for me. And in fact, I was on Bobby Flay. It didn't win, but it played a part in me selling my cookbook. So I still say I won. And you know what I did, Freddie? Because after I left Uncle Ben's, I went to sell to restaurants for 8 years, and that's how I got the interest in thinking, you know what, I could do this. I could own one of these things and do pretty good. Although I never had worked in a restaurant when I jumped in. But I took food samples with me to New York, and I made some sales calls on some publishers, and because they actually tasted my food, and the fact that I was going to be on Bobby Flay, that's what helped me.
I want to go back to something you just mentioned, and that's that you didn't grow up in the restaurant business. And I know there are some people in Houston that's how they grew up, and you were doing sales. And so I love how your story involves getting out there, taking a bet on yourself. And so what would be your advice to somebody who might be working a corporate gig? It doesn't have to be maybe within the food space, but maybe maybe they're a lawyer, they're working a 9 to 5 and they're hating life, and but they know that they can cook. So what would be your advice for that person?
I would say start small, because I started small, and I opened my first restaurant with life savings. I did not borrow. I did not have investors. It was just my work ethic and my management of it. But I was always there. I like to joke that I outworked my competition. But in the first years, I lived at my restaurant practically. I had one day a week off, and that was it. And even on that day, I'd be doing stuff for the restaurant. But I would say that's one thing, because what happens is that people open restaurants and they run out of cash. They don't have the money to keep operating. And so, because I've always lived on less than I made, to this day I still do that. I don't, money doesn't burn a hole in my pocket, as the old saying goes. So I always try to have a little life savings. My parents taught me that. And so that gave me the freedom to ride out the tough times, because we're very subject to, if there's a recession, we take it in the knees. Any kind of turmoil that's out there, could be severe weather, it could be, like this heat wave we went through this summer, that hurt our business. People weren't going out to eat, they were too hot. And you're not going to know everything, but you have to just have the faith that you can figure it out, and you'll solve each problem as it hits you, and always just trying to give your best. So yeah, I would say those are some of the important things. There are times when I have decided to invest money in I call it investing money in advertising or marketing, or PR, as in Paula Murphy. The way I see it, I said, well, would I rather have this money to spend on something else or to save, or am I going to invest it in something that's going to help me grow? And so I've done that. I've always tried to put a little money aside and spend on advertising. Some people won't do that, but I believe I have a product that if people find out, they'll come. If they find out and come and try it, they will come, and they will probably come back. chances are they'll be back. And then walking with that integrity of actually giving the best value to your customers when they walk in with the food and the service, and making it a joyful event for them. I'm coming on 25 years. We're going to have a big party here in about 3 weeks. And I've got my sauces coming out. They should be in retail within 3 months.
Sylvia'sEnchiladas.com is where you can go to learn more about Sylvia's Enchilada Kitchen, her cookbook, and her classes. Plus, she's got the big 25th anniversary celebration coming up in a few weeks, along with new bottled salsas, which will be hitting a store near you in the very near future. Sylvia, thank you so much for coming by the podcast.
Thank you very much, Freddie. So it's such a pleasure to talk to you, get to know you. I hope if you come here, let me know and I'll meet you here. I'd love to meet you in person.